Welcome to the Researching Practice, Introducing the Theory of Practice Architectures vodcast. My name is Máirín Glenn, and I'm here with the originator of the Theory of Practice Architectures, Stephen Kemmis. This is episode 4, which is entitled Practices Happen in 3 Dimensions of Intersubjective Space. It sounds a little like Star Trek. Anyway, Stephen will boldly go where no man has gone before and explain how the arrangements that make a practice possible can be called practice architectures. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Máirín, indeed. You'll remember that last time we talked about some features of practices are features of individuals, what individuals do in this picture. Sayings, doings, and relatings that we see people doing. But some features of practices are communal or extra-individual, and the cultural discursive arrangements, material economic arrangements, and social political arrangements that shape a practice are those kinds of features of the communal life of a practice. So in the beautiful picture of the people doing the tango dancing, it's not just what they do themselves as actors that's important in shaping the practice. Their whole way of being, what they're doing, the tradition that they belong to. And the fact, by the way, that these two are performing at a tango club, restaurant, is something about the kind of communal background that shapes what goes on in a practice. Now I'm going to talk about this communal space in a more detailed way. Practices happen, I'm going to say, in 3 dimensions of intersubjective space. Semantic space, what people say and do, and material space, time, and social space. These people in this picture are talking to one another. They're doing things. Those people in the background are lifting up a plank, about to hand it up to the people on the other level, and they're going to use it for something. And they're in social space. So these 2 women in the front are in one set of relationships, and the men behind are in a relationship about handing that plank up from the ground to the platform. And there's a woman on the left who seems to be measuring something, and she's doing something by herself. So there are 3 groups in 3 different social spaces that are all interconnected as these people are building a house in Habitat for Humanity. So to look at this a little bit more closely, there they are, they're talking to each other. Their practice is composed of sayings. They're communicating, encountering one another in semantic space, in the medium of language and specialist discourses. And those are cultural discursive arrangements, and I'll come back to those in a moment. So when you're looking at a practice, you say, what do I hear? What are they talking about? There's some question that they're trying to answer about what that is on the plans and what they should be doing about that. So what are they talking about? But at the same time, they're doing something. They are doing things in physical, material, space-time, in the medium of materiality and temporality, among material economic arrangements, the plan, the table, the hats, the timber, the building, the tools, all these, and the trees and the ground and the sky, by the way. Not to mention, very, very importantly, the bodies of the people who are doing the acting are among the material economic arrangements that shape a practice. And similarly, they are in social interaction with one another in the medium of solidarity, friendship, and power, relations of power over one over the other, perhaps, among social political arrangements. So these different groupings are different groups with different tasks at the moment. So you ask yourself, what do you feel when you see this? What do you think's going on here? How do you feel? How they're relating to one another? These 2 seem to be pretty well, actually, they all seem pretty happily relating to one another. But the one up on the top left there, she's not busy relating to other people as far as we know at the moment. So we always encounter one another in these three dimensions simultaneously. In a classroom, you can ask those questions. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? How are people relating to one another? And you will always be touching on those three dimensions. Now, they never appear by themselves. They always appear together. And this is a key point for the theory of practice architectures, is that they are always hanging together. We'll come back to that later. But practices also happen in a site. This is a building site. Another site is a classroom, a school, a community centre. And this site contains these different kinds of arrangements that have been found there, that are to be found there, like the grass, the trees, the ground, or things that are brought there, like the timber and the materials and the tools and the hats and so on. But these are all necessary resources for the sayings, doings, and relatings of the practice. In this case, the practice of building a Habitat for Humanity house. So the sayings are made possible by the cultural discursive arrangements in the site. People are talking about buildings. They're talking about building work at the moment. The doings of the practice are made possible by material economic arrangements, the tools, facilities, resources, the money, the bodies, etc. And these things are all happening in time and over different durations of time. They're here at the moment, but soon they'll be in a different configuration doing something else. And the relatings of the practice are made possible by social political arrangements, both life-world relationships, people knowing one another as persons, and system roles. Could it be that the woman in the middle is some kind of foreman, or is she giving suggestions to the other two about how they should perform something? But there are different roles. But in the classroom, of course, you might say there's the teacher, there are the students, and they fulfill those different sorts of roles. So practice architectures are the combinations of cultural, discursive, material, economic, and social political arrangements that enable and constrain practices. And they are found in and brought to the site. And the theory of practice architectures is a site ontological theory. That means site, that's a place like this, ontological, what exists there, what is there, what are the things that are material that make it that are present there. It's a site ontological theory because it says that the way these people practice is not only shaped by whatever they want to do, but it's shaped by the particular moment they're up to in this building. This building is dictating some of the things that they can do. It's part of the arrangements. They're up to this point, and they're deciding what to do at the next point. But you see those people up the back there, who appear to be measuring something, who knows what they're doing. But we're at a particular moment, and sight is shaping what we can do. And if they tilt that board with the joists on it too far towards them, it'll fall down on top of them. The site itself contains arrangements that are shaping what they can do. So they've had to lift it up there or move it up there or build it up there. And the site itself has prefigures what is possible for people to say and do and how they relate in the site. So practice architectures are sayings, doings, and relatings that are shaped by cultural, discursive, material, economic, social, political arrangements. And this picture of how practice is operated in relation to practice architectures is going to be something that we're going to return to in the next episode. But here is a picture drawn by Kathleen Mahon of a web of conditions that are practice architectures for online pedagogical practice, that yellow circle in the middle of that picture on the left. There are a whole lot of things that Kathleen says shape online pedagogical practice in the university she studied. They include the university mission and ethos, management systems, features to do with the subject of the course, the technologies, research, and all of those things around the circle are things that are shaping what goes on. And if we just look at the one on the right of the yellow circle, the subject or course, there are various features: the nature of the subjects themselves, the content of the subjects, whether they're inherited from someone else, some other teacher, the history of the course is external accredited. There are various things, but all of these things in these circles in this picture are part of the elaborate practice architectures that shape the practice of online pedagogy. So we shouldn't think of a practice architecture as just a single simple thing. There are many, many practice architectures that are influencing every practice. So when we're talking about them as researchers, for example, we're trying to work out which are the ones that's most important and most interesting to talk about.
And Stephen, just in any organization, would you say that so there may be several practice architectures pertaining to, say, a school, for example, or a building site. So would they connect with one another as well, in your view?
Yes, they do, because they connect together in the history and materiality of the site itself. Mm-hmm. So just if some of these things aren't present, sometimes these practices can't exist. These practices depend on arrangements in the setting to support them. And so we're speaking particular languages, we're meeting among particular material, the school building, the smart board, the desks, the chairs, the tables, and so on and so forth. All of these things are potentially practice architectures. But if you look at all of the things that are present, they're not all influencing the practice that's going on, the sayings, doings, and relatings that are going on at the moment, or at least not in obvious ways. So some of them are more important to the way things are going than others. The point of these pictures, this one and the last one, is just to show practice architectures are not just a simple, there is one practice architecture, the policies of the government, the practices of the administrators, the principal and their practices, the teachers, and the classroom and its resources. There are many, many different things that are shaping a practice at different times.
And so, in your view, would you consider that practice architectures change from moment to moment depending on what's happening in a site?
Certainly do.
Yes.
So one of the things that we're always asking ourselves is, are these things enduring things? Are they passing things, evanescent, ephemeral things? Now that Johnny has left the classroom, will everything calm down? Johnny might have been exercising a huge influence on how the practice could unfold in the classroom. But now that he's gone, it's a different classroom. And so different things can happen. And so it's always a matter of, for the researcher, for the person studying their own practice, it's always a matter of judgment to say, what are the most important things that are shaping the practice at the moment? Because the sort of strict answer is everything affects it. But we don't know what most affects it at the moment and, today and so on. So practice architectures are dynamic as the world around us is dynamic. And as climate change happens, different things will be possible on the coasts of County Mayo and here on the Central Coast in New South Wales and Australia. And some places are already falling into the sea here. And climate change is not very advanced. But those things are affecting the life of practice here. All I've tried to talk about today, at least in this episode, is these three dimensions, and that we can understand practices and the ways they happen in terms of these sorts of dimensions of social life.
That's great, Stephen. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. Okay, well, thank you for watching episode 4. Practices happen in 3 dimensions of intersubjective space. The next episode with Stephen is entitled The Theory of Practice Architectures, Understanding Practice in Order to Transform Them. You may access these vodcasts via YouTube on the link below. See you next time.
Thanks. See ya.